We are all familiar with that galaxy, far, far away, but what if we set that aside and just focused on the long time ago part? What if these characters existed in our universe? What would they look like during Earth's medieval time?
Welcome back to part 2 of building the Mandalorian armor, where we explore the question with Slava, the armor smith, of what it would look like if the Mandalorian existed here on Earth during medieval times, and what exactly would his armor set be like.
First step is to get our patterns punched out of the stainless steel that we'll be using to create the neck armor.
First things first is to make the Gorget, which is basically the neck protection. It's where the helmet meets the whole suit of armor, the shoulders attached to it, and the breastplate will then lay over top of it and make sure your neck is fully guarded from not only strikes, but the armor itself as well.
With this stainless, a lot of the preforming can be done cold, just bending it over a stake. However, once we get into the more complex shaping and dishing of the metal, we will have to use some heat using an oxypropane torch. But before we get to that, it's game time.
Back up. And now
What are you doing?
Just playing.
Get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of here. Alright, well, are you tired of playing these generic games like him? Today's sponsor will fix all that. We introduce you, once again, Raid Shadow Legend. Forget the embarrassment of playing with plastic toys. Combine hundreds of champions and raid your way. Why bother creating fiction, narrative, love stories, and upgrading your character, figuring out the species and whatnot and superpowers when Raid Shadow Legend has a whole bunch of characters pre-made for you. You can get them, play with them. For example, Tatler Rimhide has cloaks your team, reflects damage back. Amazing character that just takes you through the Doom Tower or the Hydra. Why would anyone bother with all that physical dice rolling stuff? Or perhaps Venus, another character that I like, suited for clandestine operations, works very well with your team. Superpowers include poison, so perhaps keep her out of the kitchen. Since last year I can vote, that's pretty good. Downloading Raid Shadow Legends is like having a dungeon master that really cares about you and your time. And this month is huge for Raid with a brand new release of a new faction, the Sylvan Watchers, with a whole lot of new champions, the Druids, the Ants, the Fae, the Forest Elves. They're all here and I can't wait to summon them all to play with. And if that's not enough, Raid has a whole new lineup of events, including a new season with the Forge Pass, where you can get your hands on making some of the toughest and cool gear in the game. Also, if you're an Amazon Prime member, you can get your exclusive Raid rewards in Raid, in-game, right now. There's never been a better time to start. Use my QR code right here, right now, or the link below. And get a free starter pack worth almost $30, a free champion, Verges, and this cool in-game loot. You will find these rewards here in your inbox for the next 30 days only.
And once you're in game, you can find me under the name Stalkertron, and if you're fast enough, you can join my faction and join me in playing Raid Shadow Legends today.
Now that playtime's over, time to start beginning the hot work on our sheet metal. One would imagine in armor smithing such as this that you would need a lot of different complex shaped stakes while making a suit of armor, and that is correct. However, you'll notice that Slava prefers to use this specific nice slightly dished stake to do a ton of his forming. That's just because he's gotten comfortable with it. He knows the shapes that he makes. He makes a ton of historical armor, and this shape right here gets the bulk of his work done when he does most suits of armor. With the basic forming now done, it's time to begin planishing. Planishing basically is just taking out as much of the divots that you've put in, the hammer marks that you've put into the steel during the forming, and smoothing everything out. This process tends to warp the metal a tiny bit, so as he goes, you'll see him bending things back into shape. From here, the rest of the hammer divots can be polished out later on. To create a crease or a flute in steel, you can do it two ways. You can hit the steel from behind, punching it out, but that actually thins it out. You're dishing the material, making it weaker, not stronger, and the point of a flute like this, or a crease, is to add strength, add rigidity. So the way Slava is doing it is he's using a stake underneath and carefully hammering the material away from that center line to create a raised bead.
With our Gorget now well along the way, it's time to start working on the shoulder part, or the pauldrons, of our armor set.
The base patterns for our shoulders are quite simple, and to begin forming them, it's also quite simple. Literally just start pounding on the metal, beating it to a ring, and get some of that initial form that you can refine later. With the first shoulder now dished, it's time to form the other one. And, well, why not just use force? Or perhaps the force? If you take a look at the Mandalorian's armor from the TV show, you will notice that it has a distinct center ridge raised in the middle of it. Not only does this make the overall armor piece look thicker, but it also adds a lot of strength and rigidity. To create this, Slava's once again returning to his creasing stake, and he's going to make a line on either side of the raised portion. This will look like he popped the entire center out, but really all he did was push the outside metal away from his lines.
As I stated in the last video, years back before even the Mandalorian show came out, I made myself a set of steel Mandalorian armor. Now my goal was to make it look like it existed in the Star Wars universe, so I really paid attention to all the different options we had with both shoulder pieces, chest pieces, and everything. And once the show came out, the Mandalorian show, we got a new look of what some of that armor could look like in the Star Wars universe. And some of the things that really stood out were the actual shoulder pieces. They were much more like real armor, fitted like real pauldrons, and we're going to kind of mimic that style. However, we're going to add some medieval flair to it and some risers that are going to be on the inside of the neck, giving extra protection, and we're going to be able to add a little extra detail to those a little bit later.
For those of you that complained in our previous video about some of the jump cuts that Slava adds to his videos, well, here you go. Here's a hand grinder cutting out some steel. Super exciting, right? Perhaps not complain about super skilled editing. You may notice that he didn't completely cut these patterns all the way out of the steel, and that's because they're very narrow pieces, and when doing a lot of this hot forming, you'll get too much warping if you cut them all the way, so he's leaving them attached to the sheet to do the initial forming.
In this series, we're going to be covering the complete build of the Mandalorian suit of armor, the helmet, the breastplate, the legs, everything. But if you want to see the full breakdown of all of this, you have to go over to Slava's English channel. He has a channel that's completely dubbed in English, and he really goes into depth explaining his mindset of why he's doing things the way he's doing it, and you really want to go check out his channel anyway for some great content that won't be featured here. Don't forget to go to Slava's channel and support him by clicking the link below. This is the way.
Now these raised guard portions wouldn't have much structure at all if we didn't roll the edges. Rolling the edges not only adds a lot of strength to these pieces, but if you were wearing these shoulders without a helmet and there's just sharp raised pieces of metal, you're bound to probably hurt yourself. So rolling edges on armor not only makes them much more strong, but also adds a lot of safety to them as well for the actual user.
One of the most important things for the shoulders themselves, all the different pieces, is the articulation, meaning we don't want to just drill holes and rivet all those pieces together. It would be really binding and tough to move, but if you add slots and little risers where the rivets go, you'll be able to free-formly move your shoulder, and that's what you need when you're in combat. You want as much movement as possible. Just like with the helmet, Slava decided to add a two-tone look. Not only are the pieces stainless, but he decided to use a wire wheel and some heat to deposit some brass on some of the pieces to give it that nice white and gold look. As I mentioned before, Slava's going to add a little extra detail to the guard portion of our pauldrons in the form of an inscription in Mandalorian language that reads, "Family is more than blood," which is very appropriate for the Mandalorian himself.
Now, as I said earlier, it's really important for the pieces of our shoulders to have as much articulation as possible. To do this, instead of just connecting the lames directly to the shoulder, Slava's actually going to rivet them on strips of leather that then will be attached to the main shoulder piece. This will allow free movement, much more like a garment and much less like a tin can.
Of course, all armor is going to bind you up a little bit, but one of the most important things for Slava when he creates any kind of armor, whether it's fantasy or historical, is to get the maximum amount of maneuverability, as much articulation as you can possibly get, without sacrificing coverage that you need for safety during combat.
If you're enjoying this project so far, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. With today's portion of our armor now complete, there's only one thing left to do. That's to try it all on. This is the way. This medieval Mando suit is coming along fantastically. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like, and even if you just want to support us, every like counts. Tell us in the comments below your idea of what you'd like to see us build next.
Well, I think the shoulder and the Gorget turned out awesome. They really matched the helmet very well. I can't wait to do the next part of this series, which will be the breastplate. If you haven't seen part 1 where we make the helmet, click here right now and check that out. Slava did an amazing job.